She had always loved the outdoors, the thrill of a new trail, the crisp mountain air, and the sense of freedom that came from being surrounded by nature. At 28, she was in the prime of her life, fit, adventurous, and with a spirit that refused to be tamed. Her friends often joked that she was a magnet for adventure, always seeking the next climb, the next challenge, the next story she could tell. When she decided to take a solo hiking trip across the rugged terrain of a remote mountain range, nobody was particularly surprised. They knew she could handle herself. She was careful, experienced, and meticulous about safety, but even the most cautious can sometimes be caught off guard. In the weeks leading up to her departure, she had downloaded a new dating app, looking for companionship, someone who could perhaps share her love for the wild. She was never serious about online dating, but swiping through profiles became a kind of entertainment, a small distraction during her routine. That was when she came across his profile. He seemed harmless at first, an outdoorsy type, a guide, someone familiar with the mountains she intended to explore. Their messages started casually, with jokes about hiking gear and favorite trails. He seemed knowledgeable, even charming, and before she knew it, a plan was made. She would meet him at a small lodge near the trailhead, just before she began her solo trek. The day she arrived at the lodge, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had shared her itinerary with friends and family, always diligent about her safety. When she saw him waiting, tall, seemingly confident, she felt a sense of ease. He greeted her warmly, asking about her trip, giving advice about the paths ahead. They spoke briefly over coffee before setting out for a short hike near the base of the mountains. She felt like she had found a guide who could make her adventure even more enjoyable. Little did she know, this encounter would become the beginning of a nightmare she could never have anticipated. Over the next 2 days, she and the guide spent time exploring less traveled trails, laughing, and exchanging stories about life and nature. He seemed attentive, knowledgeable, someone who genuinely seemed interested in her safety and well-being. Friends and family on the phone felt reassured when she called, her voice bright, excited about the landscapes she was discovering. By the second evening, she mentioned that she would be continuing deeper into the wilderness the following morning, intending to complete a longer trek before returning. The guide smiled, offering last-minute tips, and promised to check in. That would be the last time anyone heard her voice. Search efforts began when she failed to return as scheduled. Initially, authorities thought perhaps she had lost her way, a common risk for hikers in that area. Volunteers combed the trails, helicopters scanned the rugged terrain, and friends organized searches, hoping she had simply encountered a delay. As days passed, concern grew. She had been meticulous in planning, carrying supplies, maps, and communication devices. It seemed unlikely she would vanish without a trace. The search quickly became urgent, drawing media attention, the kind of story that grips public attention. A young American woman lost in the wilderness, her last known companion a local guide she met online. Then came the discovery that would shock everyone. Only her severed feet were found, washed up near a remote stream. The revelation was horrifying, surreal, and utterly devastating to those who knew her. Questions raced through the minds of family, friends, and authorities. How could someone so experienced and cautious meet such a tragic end? The investigation intensified, focusing on the guide she had met. Authorities uncovered that his background was far from innocent. Reports emerged that he had been involved in previous suspicious incidents, though nothing had ever been proven. The realization that the person she had trusted may have been responsible for such an unspeakable act left everyone reeling. The tragedy sparked conversations about online safety, the risks of meeting strangers, and the illusion of security that familiarity can create. People who had seen her as invincible began to confront the harsh reality that danger can come in the most unsuspecting forms. Her story became a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most prepared adventurers are vulnerable to the darkness that sometimes hides behind a smile. Family and friends mourned deeply, grappling with the incomprehensible loss, trying to reconcile her vibrant life with the brutal end she had suffered. Months later, the case remained a haunting memory, investigations ongoing, but the void left by her absence was permanent. The mountains she loved so dearly became a site of grief and reflection, a place where nature's beauty collided with human cruelty. For those who knew her, she would forever be remembered for her courage, her love of life, and her unyielding spirit, a young woman whose passion for adventure could not be extinguished, even by the most shocking tragedy. Her story, though heart-wrenching, served as a somber reminder of the fragility of trust and the unpredictable dangers that can lurk in the shadows of even the most beautiful journeys. The discovery was horrifying, a scene that would haunt anyone who heard about it. After the young hiker failed to return from her trip, authorities had launched a massive search across the rugged mountain terrain. They combed through valleys, streams, and cliffside trails, hoping against hope that she had simply lost her way or encountered a temporary setback. Her friends and family clung to every small possibility, each passing hour weighing heavier on their hearts. Then came the unimaginable. Only her severed feet were found, neatly removed and partially submerged in a shallow stream, far from where she had been last seen. The shock of the discovery sent ripples through the community, the media, and the nation, sparking a mixture of grief, anger, and disbelief. Police immediately shifted their focus, realizing that what initially seemed like a tragic accident was now clearly something far more sinister. The fact that only her feet had been recovered pointed to deliberate action. Authorities began retracing her steps, examining her communications, and scrutinizing the last person she had been with, the guy she had met on Tinder just 2 days before her disappearance. At first, it seemed inconceivable. He had appeared friendly, helpful, almost protective, guiding her through trails and offering advice about the mountain paths. Yet now, suspicion clung to every interaction, every smile he had given her. Friends and family struggled to comprehend how someone she trusted so quickly could have been capable of such brutality. Forensic teams worked tirelessly, analyzing the scene where her feet were found. The evidence suggested careful planning, precision, and a disturbing lack of remorse. It was as if the perpetrator had anticipated the search, ensuring that only partial remains would be discovered, leaving authorities with more questions than answers. Each new piece of evidence painted a chilling picture of the danger that had lurked behind the charming exterior of her guide. Authorities began digging into his past, uncovering unsettling details that had previously gone unnoticed. Reports of previous suspicious disappearances, local incidents, and minor criminal activities began to surface, forming a pattern that made the situation even more alarming. The media coverage was relentless. News outlets ran continuous updates, interviews with friends and family, and experts speculating on the psychological profile of the suspected perpetrator. Social media erupted with outrage, grief, and speculation. People were horrified at the thought that a simple act of trusting a stranger could end in such a violent way. Experts warned about the dangers of meeting strangers online, emphasizing that appearances can be deceiving and that even seemingly ordinary encounters can escalate into tragedy. Her story became a cautionary tale, a vivid reminder that in an age of instant connections, danger can hide behind a profile picture and a well-crafted bio. Meanwhile, her family faced an unbearable reality. The young woman who had always been so full of life, so careful and prepared, was gone, her life stolen in the briefest of encounters. Their grief was compounded by the grotesque nature of the discovery. Mourning became complicated by horror, the process of understanding her death intertwined with disbelief. Friends shared memories, photographs, and stories, painting a picture of a woman who loved fiercely, adventured boldly, and lived life on her own terms. They struggled to reconcile these memories with the violent way her story had ended, searching for answers that might never come. Authorities pursued every lead, interviewing locals, combing digital footprints, and reconstructing the hiker's final hours. They discovered that she had spoken to her guide about the trails she planned to take, had shared updates on her location, and had even mentioned calling her family before setting off deeper into the mountains. These details, meant to ensure safety, now became haunting reminders of how trust had been exploited. The investigation revealed the darkest aspects of human nature, showing how someone could manipulate charm and knowledge of the terrain to commit an act so horrifying. Public outrage intensified as the case developed. Forums and comment sections filled with condemnation, support for the family, and discussions about online safety. Authorities appealed for witnesses, for anyone who had seen the pair in the days leading up to the disappearance. The mountains, once a symbol of beauty and freedom, now carried the weight of fear and tragedy. Hikers, adventurers, and locals became hyper-aware, cautious of every stranger and every unexpected encounter. Her story, repeated in headlines and documentaries, would shape the way people thought about online interactions and wilderness exploration for years to come. Months later, as the investigation continued, her memory remained alive in the hearts of those who loved her. Fundraisers, memorials, and social media tributes honored her adventurous spirit and the life she had lived so fully. Her story became a stark reminder of both the beauty and the peril of human connections, a lesson that trust, while vital, must be tempered with caution. The guide she met on Tinder became a symbol of hidden danger, a chilling reminder that evil can masquerade as kindness. Though her life ended in tragedy, her legacy inspired awareness, vigilance, and a deeper appreciation for the fragility of safety in a world where appearances can be deceiving. In the end, the horror of discovering only her severed feet would never be forgotten. It was a grim testament to the unpredictability of fate, the perils of misplaced trust, and the terrifying reality that danger can exist where we least expect it. Her story lived on, a haunting, unforgettable lesson that even the most ordinary encounters can conceal unspeakable darkness. Those who knew her, and those who learned of her fate, would forever carry the weight of that lesson, a reminder that life's adventures, however thrilling, can sometimes turn tragically and inexplicably wrong. The morning she left for her hike, she was filled with her usual sense of excitement and anticipation. The air was crisp, the sky a brilliant blue, and the mountains seemed to call to her with an irresistible allure. She had meticulously planned the trip, reviewing maps, checking weather conditions, and ensuring she had every safety precaution in place. For her, hiking wasn't just a hobby, it was a form of meditation, a way to disconnect from the noise of everyday life and immerse herself in the raw beauty of nature. She packed her gear with care, double-checked her communication devices, and even made a final call to a friend, promising to check in at the end of each day. Everything seemed perfectly normal, routine even, yet none of it could have prepared her for what would follow. She had been excited about meeting the guide she had connected with online. He seemed like the perfect companion for a short part of her journey, knowledgeable, personable, and eager to share hidden trails and secret vistas. When she arrived at the rendezvous point, a small lodge near the trailhead, she was greeted with a warm smile that immediately put her at ease. They exchanged pleasantries, shared coffee, and discussed the terrain ahead. He seemed competent, confident, and reassuring in his guidance. Over the next 2 days, they explored trails that twisted and turned through dense forests and steep cliffs. He seemed attentive, always pointing out landmarks, advising on foot placement, and sharing stories about the mountains that made her feel both informed and cared for. By the second evening, she expressed her desire to continue further into the wilderness on her own. She had always relished solo trekking and had mapped out a route that would take her deeper into the mountains, away from the more frequented paths. Her guide smiled and nodded, offering final words of advice and promising to check in. She hugged him goodbye, confident in her safety measures, and set off early the next morning. She felt a familiar thrill, a sense of liberation that only comes when one is surrounded by towering peaks and endless sky. But as she disappeared into the dense forest, no one could foresee the grim events that were about to unfold. When she didn't return as planned, initial concern gave way to panic. Friends and family, accustomed to her reliability, were alarmed that her phone had gone unanswered. The search began almost immediately, with authorities deploying helicopters, rescue dogs, and volunteers to scour the area. They combed every trail she might have taken, looking for a clue, a sign, any indication of her whereabouts. Days passed, and with each passing hour, the hope that she had simply lost her way began to fade. Then came the discovery that would shock everyone, a gruesome find. Only her severed feet were located, partially submerged in a remote stream far from the lodge where she had last been seen. The authorities' investigation shifted dramatically at that point. What had initially seemed like a tragic accident now appeared to be a carefully orchestrated act. Forensic evidence indicated that the severing of her feet was deliberate and precise, not a result of natural hazards or wildlife. Investigators scrutinized her last known interactions, her movements on the trails, and her digital communications. Suspicion quickly fell on the guide she had met online. What had seemed like a friendly, knowledgeable companion now carried the shadow of doubt, and authorities delved into his past. They unearthed previous reports of suspicious behavior and encounters with other hikers that, while never resulting in charges, painted a disturbing pattern. Public reaction was immediate and intense. Media coverage exploded with headlines, interviews, and expert analysis. Social media was flooded with reactions, speculation, and tributes to her adventurous spirit. People everywhere were horrified at the notion that someone could take advantage of a simple act of trust, someone who had presented himself as a helper and friend but may have been a predator. Online safety and the risks of meeting strangers became a major talking point, and her story quickly became a cautionary tale shared in forums, safety seminars, and news programs. Her family was devastated, caught between mourning and trying to understand the unimaginable. They remembered her as vibrant, fearless, and endlessly curious, someone who lived life fully and carefully. The brutal nature of her death made grief even more complex, turning sorrow into a mixture of anger, confusion, and heartbreak. Friends and fellow hikers shared memories, photos, and stories that highlighted her love for the outdoors, her enthusiasm for exploration, and the joy she found in simple experiences. Those recollections clashed violently with the horrific reality, leaving them struggling to reconcile her spirit with the way her life ended. The investigation continued for months, with authorities following leads, questioning locals, and piecing together her final movements. They discovered that she had meticulously planned her route and had even updated friends about her progress. Each detail revealed how careful and aware she had been, emphasizing the cruelty and premeditation behind the crime. Her story became emblematic of the dangers lurking in seemingly ordinary encounters, the hidden threats that can exist in a world where a friendly smile can mask malevolent intent. As time passed, her story remained a haunting reminder of vulnerability and the importance of caution. Memorials were held, social media pages commemorated her life, and her tale became part of the broader conversation about online interactions, trust, and safety in remote areas. The mountains she had loved became a symbol of both beauty and tragedy, a place where the line between adventure and danger blurred. Those who knew her never forgot the vibrancy of her life, the thrill of her spirit, and the way she embraced every journey with open arms. Though she was gone, the legacy of her life endured. She inspired people to live boldly, explore passionately, and appreciate the world around them, even as her fate served as a grim warning. The discovery of only her severed feet remained a chilling testament to the hidden dangers in everyday encounters, a reminder that appearances can deceive and that tragedy can strike even the most careful and prepared. Her story, unforgettable and tragic, left a mark on everyone who heard it, a lesson in both caution and the enduring spirit of someone who truly loved life to its fullest.